Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Care Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started. In 2018, I did a recording with Allie and Carly for their podcast called Birth Kweens. If you've not binged that podcast, here is your sign. And our conversation covered everything, including my birth story with Finnley to why I came into birth education as a career. And we covered it so well, and I love them so much, that I asked them if we could resurrect it by replaying it here. And obviously they said yes. So this is Finnley's birth story, and I look forward to the episode on me becoming a mother, which was made possible by adopting my eldest daughter, Angie, at 8 years old. Sometimes our plans for parenthood shape into something even better than we can imagine, although the road to get there is full of heartbreak and disappointment.
Hi, and welcome to the Birth Queens podcast. We're your Birth Queens. I'm Allie.
I'm Carly.
And in this week's episode, we are interviewing one of my favorite people, the lovely Care Messer. Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Thank you for coming and doing this with us today.
Well, you're paying me a lot, so.
Yes. Bribery.
Bribery. Pay out the big bucks.
Yeah. Yes.
Here at the Queendom.
Yep. We're sitting on the floor of my studio apartment, but we have a lot of money. Don't be fooled. Yeah. So rich.
The Queendom is only 200 square feet, but no one's paying attention.
Nope. It's fine. For those of you who don't know, Care Messer is a staple of the San Diego birth community. Just to give a brief overview of her background, she is the founder of the San Diego Birth Education Center. She's a birth and postpartum doula, a certified hypnotherapist, a hypnobirthing practitioner, a placenta encapsulationist, an overall just bad bitch that gets stuff done. That's my favorite one of your qualities.
I've added 2 more things on there, too.
You have? What are your other things?
I'm a professional cuddler and an erotic blueprint coach, a sex coach.
Erotic blueprint coach.
That'll be a whole other episode. It will be very tasty.
All right. Well, I don't really want to
we don't want
do it injustice and not properly represent it here. So
totally.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, just any erotic is my best word.
You add some sex in with that, and it's a whole complete package.
She's really trying to, keep her business going by keeping people boning and getting pregnant, which is feeding the whole cycle.
They're just like, oh, don't you need a doula? Oh, don't you need a wedding planner? Oh, don't you?
Yeah, right? Yeah. Totally.
It's like the hashtag sex pays my bills is what
Exactly, exactly.
In a variety of ways.
Yes.
Thank you, sex.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you,
sex, for being the best.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you.
So although her bio and her list of professional accomplishments is long and impressive, really what we're here to talk about today is your birth story and your history with conceiving and, well, first, adopting your older daughter and then eventually giving birth to your daughter in 2008, your daughter Finnley, and just your whole story around that and kind of how that led into your life now as the birth queen that you are.
I don't know if I'd call it a birth queen, but
you're a birth queen.
I mean, we will call you a birth queen.
If we're birth queens, you're a birth queen, all right?
Yeah. It's a club.
It's a club, yep. Everyone's invited. Just kidding. No, you're not.
Allie, mind your manners.
God, I can't. So maybe start by telling us a little bit about your background and what your journey to becoming a parent looked like.
Okay, well, I was raised in a religion where you're supposed to have lots of kids, and that's what we had planned on. And that wasn't what was supposed to happen. While we were in school, I kept having miscarriage after miscarriage and couldn't figure out why. And no one else could, and we were in and out of different insurances, so you can't afford in vitro. You wouldn't think to do fertility. I could get pregnant. It's just they all left. My longest was 13 weeks, and usually they would leave around 7 or 8 weeks. I say they, like they had a choice. Maybe they did. And then after my 6th miscarriage, this was the one that was staying the longest. I felt the best. So I sent little timer clocks out to everybody for Christmas, so on Christmas morning they could open it and have a timer to calculate when this baby was coming, and 2 days before Christmas I started to bleed again. And I literally lost my mind. I went into a severe depression and literally gave up. I was like, I'm done with kids. Tie my tubes. I want a big ring. I want a huge house. I want a really nice car. I don't know. This parenthood stuff sucks, and I'm not doing it. And really bad depression. I was working as an apartment manager at the time to get my husband through law school. I would go down and I would work, and I would come back up and eat and cry and sleep. And in December, when that happened, the Christmas presents stayed under the tree, didn't open them. And in March, the tree was still there with dust on it, and the presents were still under the tree. I don't even know if my husband and I talked during those 3 months. And we got a call from social services that our bishop had given them our number, and there was a little girl at the local Polinsky Center who needed a place to stay, and she was 5, and my husband's like, of course we'll take her. And he's like, you might want to ask your wife, because the Christmas tree is up, and I think people are going to come into your house and make sure it's safe, and
your Christmas tree is
still up, and it's the end of March. And so
it's going to be a red flag for anyone trying to place a child.
Right? Something's wrong here.
Like Christmas too much.
But there was something about, wow, there's a little girl who needs us. And I didn't go into mom mode at that moment. I went into, let's get this house ready. She can't stay at a holding facility, right? And anyway, long story short, after 3 years of going back and forth with the system and her parent and stuff, we ended up adopting Angie. And she was supposed to be my firstborn. She came knowing how to do chores. She could dress herself. She was beautiful. And she literally made me a mom. And I was content with that. We got a little Pomeranian. And then she was both of our babies, and I thought it was complete. We moved into our first house, and in the background, my husband's life was unfolding that I didn't know about. So that was kind of what was building up to this. And then one day, I got pregnant. And I didn't know I was pregnant, and I had been eating green smoothies because I had a really weird, this is divine timing in the weirdest way, a really bad rash on my face. And the lady waxing my eyebrows said, you probably have a gluten intolerance or blah, blah, blah. And so you should go on green smoothies. I'm like, what are those? Well, they're vegetables. As soon as she said vegetables, I'm like, nope, I don't do those. And you mix them with some juice and you have a green smoothie. And that sounded disgusting to me.
Where are the meat and potatoes?
Exactly. That doesn't make sense. Within 5 days, the itching went away. And then within 2 weeks, the bumps went away. But during that time, I conceived, and I had probably enough folic acid in my system that it could sustain a pregnancy. Because
Greens are really high in folate.
Yeah. And what did I have? What's the name of the condition I had?
MTHFR.
That.
Yeah.
Yes, which you found out later.
So when did you find it out?
So within about, I don't know, probably on my 3rd month, all of a sudden I couldn't eat vegetables anymore. And they were gagging me. And I was like, why am I didn't know I was pregnant yet. But I was like, wait, I haven't had a period. So I thought, I'll just test it. And it was bright pink, yes, 2 lines. And then I got sick to my stomach. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to bleed again. The trauma, revisits every time you have a miscarriage. But we were with a high-powered hospital with really good insurance. I went to a specialist, a perinatologist, and she said, wow, that's interesting. You are pregnant. There's this and this. And she looked at my history. And so that's when she ran that test on a fluke and a whim. There's something that's really rare. Now it's not. That was 10 years ago.
Right.
And I'm just going to test you for that. And sure enough, that's what it was. And she said, you just need high folate and B and whatever.
Yeah. And for people who don't know, we've talked a lot kind of here and there in our past episodes about MTHFR, but Carly, can you give like the quick and dirty? What does that mean?
Yes, I've really beat this dead horse, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, the horse is laying there waiting for your strike, so go ahead.
Okay, great. So MTHFR is a really common gene mutation. It's just something that wasn't very well understood for a long time. And it basically, it affects a process called methylation in your body. And some of the pertinent details are that it affects your ability to detoxify. And it also makes it so that you can't utilize your B vitamin intake, especially folate and B12. So folate's B9, and then B12 is also called cobalamin. And if you can't convert that into a usable form, it affects your body in a lot of different ways because they perform like 300 different jobs in your body. And so it results in miscarriage oftentimes because it will cause a blood clot to form in like the fetal placenta or like the embryo, and a baby doesn't have large enough veins or blood vessels to be able to withstand having a blood clot. And so that is what causes a miscarriage. But MTHFR is associated with many different things. It's a very complex topic, but that's the quick and dirty on it.
Dirty. Thanks, Carly.
And see, I didn't have to say it because Carly's here.
I know. That's why I invite her every time we do
Right?
this.
Don't
Very
pretend like
smart.
you invite
The
me.
only reason.
I don't like you anymore.
Very smart.
So you already were pregnant. You find out.
And once I started taking those little white pills, it sustained the pregnancy. It did not help me connect with the baby because not knowing anything about trauma and no one around me knowing anything about trauma to tell me, it was just, you're pregnant this time, you're pregnant this time.
Great.
But I couldn't attach. I couldn't get excited about it. And I would, you check the toilet in your underwear every day. Like, is today the day? She's going to leave. He's going to leave. What's going to happen? And it's trauma. It's really, it's traumatic, which has given me a big view for other families that go through that. At about 6 months, when I went into my appointment, your usual appointment, she said, oh, and I looked at your drug history, so you're going to do a natural birth. And I went, no. And she went, well, but you're allergic to everything that goes in an epidural. I'm like, well, isn't an epidural just morphine? I'm good with morphine. Morphine and I she's like, no, that would kill you. I'm like, I'll take my chances. And she said, no, you really do need to do a Bradley class or a Lamaze class or something natural in order to know how to do this. Because if I gave you an epidural, your body would turn inside out and it would be on fire and it would be worse than having a natural birth. I'm like, nothing's worse than having a natural birth. And I started to sob, like literally sob and beg her. Like, you don't understand. I don't do drugs, I don't do pain, and I have to have drugs, and I
love drugs.
I love drugs.
I'm Mormon. This is my only chance.
Yes, and I need a lot. And I said, you can numb me from the nose down. Like, I can't have a baby out of it. Have you seen my vagina? Do you know how small that is? And it was all of the stories I'd heard about how horrible my birth was, and if she couldn't do it, I couldn't do it, and there's no way, and it was just the most painful experience of her life. And I am a wuss, and I've been through many surgeries, and I do not do well with pain. And she said, well, I'm really sorry. You should go research this. And I cried solid for 2 weeks. I was paranoid. I was a basket case. Even just talking about it, I was so nervous. And my husband's like, dude, I don't know what you're going to do. Like, I've been through your surgeries. You cannot handle this. And my mom said, you're going to die in childbirth. You're going to be a statistic. I'm really
you're
worried.
Die from pain.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen.
You're going to be a statistic.
I'm going to be a
statistic.
statistic.
Care's mom is awesome.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
In my mind, I'm like, you're not coming to my birth. Like, really, you're not going to witness me dying if that's what's going to happen.
And I'll die in peace. Right.
And my religious, martyrdom background came through. Well, if I have to birth this baby and die, at least, that should get me to heaven, right?
I'll get my 10,000 virgins in heaven.
Right? There's something about that. So I kind of made it my mind like I didn't have a choice, even while I'm sobbing. And my niece had done 2 births with hypnobirthing and had mailed me the book. And I'm like, and I don't read. Like, really? Now you want me to read a book? And I'm still crying. And she said,
There's like, don't you guys know I just eat cake?
Right? Yeah, this is not okay.
worst.
And I knew her baby's like slipped out. And I'm like, that's not me. Do you know my genetics and my history? And she said, Care, it's nothing more than deep relaxation. And I'm like, and I'm not a relaxed person. I don't read. I'm not a yoga person. I have a big footprint on this planet. I don't recycle anything. Like, I'm a meat eater. Like, this isn't me.
My carbon footprint is large.
It's very large.
Large and in charge.
Yeah, it's way better than it was. But I was a basket case, and I didn't really have a choice. And so one night I just picked up the book. I did remember, I did know how to read.
You really did indeed know how to read.
The words are making sense.
Yeah, they were making sense. And within probably 100 pages, something clicked that said, we haven't always had an epidural cart outside of a door. Like, your family literally settled the West in covered wagons and had babies in buffalo carcasses in the middle of storms, right? You have...
Wow.
Yeah, we have...
That's gnarly.
Some powerful relatives. Yeah. That I didn't think I really came from.
She's from a strong stock.
Strong stock. Yeah. I'm sure there's some German and stuff in there, too.
Yeah.
But there was just something that said, people do this all the time. Like, there has to be a trick to this. They do it all the time. Still not knowing what that was, I kept reading, and I started drinking the Kool-Aid. And I started listening to the affirmations, listening to the rainbow relaxation every night. And I had literally what I call a devil on one side and an angel on the other shoulder going, you're an idiot. You think you can do this? Oh, my gosh. There's no way. You are such a fool. And then there will be unicorns and fairy dust all over. The baby will slide into your pantyhose, and you will not even know you were having a baby. And I wrestled with that. I know I don't even wear pantyhose.
Yeah.
But I wrestled with
great
that.
touch. Yeah.
And we ended up where, of course, my husband was not going to go to a class, especially outside the home. And so we hired a private instructor to come to our house. And I wanted Angie to be a part of it because I'm like, she's 11 and this is going to be her sister. And Angie, to this day, is not pregnant, probably because she knows how babies come into the world. And it freaked her out by seeing all that stuff at a young age, which is good birth control. Parents show them lots of vaginas and what happens when they
Saw
have
my
sex.
mom have a baby when I was 14. Still not pregnant.
Yeah.
Not on the horizon.
Yeah, it's kind of shocks you if you're early enough. You catch them early enough. But I won't even say it bonded us as a family because Angie would cover her eyes up. Paul would kind of roll his eyes and go, whatever. But I learned that I had to do it myself at some level. And I had to connect with this baby who I had not connected with. So if anything, the hypnobirthing started opening me up to, I need to name her. I need to talk to her. I need to see what kind of birth she wants because this isn't about me, especially if I was going to die in childbirth. Because that's what I was thinking was going to happen. So I had to switch from...
Your death.
Exactly. Like, I
Writing
want
your
bagpipes,
will.
everyone.
Yeah, I want that.
Directives.
Pink roses. And
Duly noted.
Starting, yeah, it's written down. I have it just in case for everybody. Lots of lilacs. I had to die in the spring. So I started thinking about this was her birth, not my birth. And just by switching that, all of a sudden I'm like, well, then I need a birth plan. Well, okay, how do I do a birth plan? Of course, back then I had a 25-page birth plan. And I called the hospital that I was going to birth at, and I started talking to the charge nurse, because you always go to the charge nurse, right? The person in charge, the head person, right? And when I started saying, and I need this, and I want intermittent monitoring, and she said no to every single thing that I ask. And I want to eat, and I want to drink, and I want skin to skin, and I don't want the goop in the eyes. And she said, no, this was 10 years ago. It's changed a lot since then.
Was it in California?
Yeah.
Okay.
I won't give you the name of the hospital, but it's here in San Diego.
That's fair.
That's fair.
I appreciate it.
I work well with them now, so I don't want to screw it up.
Right.
And then she said, just a minute. And I heard her walk away from the desk, and she started whispering. And I'm like listening, and she said, it sounds like you want to birth at a birth center. And I go, no, I don't. I like hospitals. No, I think you want to birth at a birth center. Everything you've said, you can get at Best Start. And I went, no, I don't know. I really like the hospital. I'm not scared of hospitals. I'm scared of birthing out of hospitals. And she said, well, my daughter and I left this hospital, and we went and birthed with the midwives at Best Start, and it was amazing. And she had a water birth, and I'm like, what's a water birth? Got my mind thinking, and I came from a background where midwives were witches. Like, there was something about midwives that just wasn't on the up and up.
Yeah.
Where I grew up, and
Still the same.
Yeah.
still the same. And now
witchy queen sitting next
now
to us.
I'm
Still all
a
witchy.
witch with them. So it was just a different point of view. And so I looked into Best Start and fell in love with, I talked to Karen, actually, who's one of the owners, fell in love with her, then met her mom, who is Roberta, who's been doing midwifery forever. And it's the longest standing,
And
freestanding
she's
birth.
such a sweetheart.
She's amazing. And, because you've been there, worked there.
Well,
and
did many births
once
with Roberta.
I walked into that birth center, my feet hit the hardwood floor. I knew I was going to have my baby there. And my husband said, no, we're not. And I went, you don't have to come, but this is where I'm having my baby. And for however the insurance worked out, we paid a $200 deductible, and then it was refunded back to us. So I literally did not pay one penny to birth there. And started going to my weekly appointments. Learned a lot about birth and how our bodies work while I was there, because midwives actually sit and explain it to you. Whereas where I was at the hospital, it was in and out, and I was so high risk that everything was doomsday, and we were looking for the heartbeat to make sure no one's dead. When I would go to Best Start, it was, let's see how everyone's doing in there. It was just a totally different kind of care, and I didn't understand it, but I loved it, but I couldn't put a name to it. Like, what is the difference here? One was looking for life, and one was looking for worst case scenario.
Yes, that really sums up the difference between the midwifery model of care and the medical model of care for birth.
Right. And you can not fix birth, you look to see how you support birth. And it's not a medical condition. Even though I had a medical condition, birth is not a medical condition. It's beautiful and it's sacred. And once I had started to connect with Finnley, who named herself, I knew I wanted an F name because of a lady at my church that I wanted to name her after. And I couldn't find an F name like Francis. Like, what are the good F names? And in the middle of the night, I woke up with Finnley, like over and over. And I'm like, what's that? And I was like, it's going to be some dragon warrior slayer or something. And I looked it up, and it was in the boys section, and it was fair-haired hero. And I went, maybe you're saving me from something. And so I'm like, Finnley. From now on, it'll be Finnley. And we named her Finnley Kate. And long story short, by the time I got close to delivery, the little devil guy on the side of my shoulder was gone, and the other one saying, trust, you can do this, was all I heard. And the affirmations were very strong for me, which those were hippie too. Didn't think people ever did those. Just yogis, right? And I don't understand those people. I do now, didn't then. And I went to 42 weeks, and I remember Roberta saying, well, after 42 weeks, we have to transfer you to the hospital, and you'll have to go and get induced and have a baby there. And I'm like, no, I won't get induced. I'll just go into labor and have a baby. And she said, well, after 42 weeks, and she explained the science to me and blah, blah, blah. And in my brain, I was like, nope, I will not get induced, but I will go to the hospital after 42 weeks. But I said, Roberta, she's going to be born here. And she's like, I hope you're right, with this really loving, I hope she doesn't have to transfer face, because you don't ever want to have someone disappointed in your care. But I could, now that I look back as a birth worker, I'm like, she was thinking, oh, what the hell? This girl, she's so in oblivion, has no clue that she's really going to transfer. And the night of 41 and 6, my water released at 3 a.m. And I called my doula. I'm like, I'm going to have a baby. And she's like, any surges? I'm like, no. And she's like, why are you awake? I'm like, I don't know. I'm so excited. I'm having a baby. And she's like, yeah, within 24 hours. Like, go to sleep. Get some sleep. And I'm like, but I have to go get my antibiotics because I have GBS. And Best Start was amazing. I went and got my antibiotics, came home for 4 hours, went back, got my antibiotics. And then mid-afternoon, the midwife said, we really need to get this going. She did not say, you are on a timeline, and if your water is released more than 24 hours, we're going to have to transfer you, because that would have shut my life down. Thank you for not saying that, but saying there are things we can do. Yeah. Let's try and get this going. I'm like, okay. And she gave me a little protocol for castor oil, which I was more concerned about drinking the oil than the fact that it was actually going to have labor. Because labor was going to be easy, because I did hypnobirthing, right?
Of course.
And I did my little castor oil thing and had 2 surges. I did another round the next hour, and then they were 3 minutes apart. So I didn't have
also shit your life out? That's
no, I didn't.
Wow,
you did it?
You're like one of. There were unicorns.
Yes,
like,
that was the unicorn.
That prediction was real.
What?
Yeah, so I don't know.
So many questions.
Maybe I was so compacted that it just stayed there until later. I don't know. Didn't happen.
Just had a nice gentle poop after the baby came out.
For a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know. And it was
great.
To me, because I knew what to expect, kind of, because you never feel it, but I knew it was one breath at a time, relax in between, one breath at a time. And that's all I literally did. I didn't have an expectation other than I was going to have a baby come out at some point. And my labor was 5 hours and 58 minutes.
Oh, wow. Quickie.
It wasn't long and drawn out. Helps when your baby's tucked into the right position, correct?
It does.
Sure,
yes, it does.
Yes. And trusting birth, I think now I know why she had to come so fast and so forward. But at the time, laboring in the tub, the few pictures that I do have, I'm kicked back in the tub in between, full makeup. I looked amazing. Horrible swimsuit, but it had hot pink in it, so that's all I cared about.
Great.
Hot pink and chartreuse. What was I thinking? Because I had to cover my nipples because I was very modest. By the end, I was like, whoo-hoo, take it off. But at the time, I had purple nail polish. It was a beautiful labor for me, and I was so excited to finally be a physical mom, and have it be physical for me that I just would when there was a surge, go into myself and I got this 30 seconds. I've got this 30 more seconds. I've got this for a minute. And I didn't have an expectation. And I think that's what made it a good birth. And when it was pressure instead of pain, because it could have rocked my world in pain, but I felt it as pressure and I'm going to pop all over the midwives and what's that going to look like? Because I really felt like that. But it was extreme pressure. And then at the end, I let her sit in that crowning position for a very long time. And Roberta's like, push your baby out. Now just breathing your baby out. Crap. Like, push your baby out. And I'm like, I'm okay. I don't know why, but I'm okay. And I could feel her head there. And something came to me that said, something's not right. And I said it out loud, something's not right. And Roberta said, yeah, you need to push your baby out. Like, it's not. Let's push your baby out. And I said, no, Roberta, something's not right. And inside my head, I thought, well, maybe the kid's going to have GBS and we'll have to give her antibiotics because that was a risk with that. So I thought, okay, I can handle that if she's sick. And then the affirmation, you can handle whatever turn your birthing may take, started replaying in my head, like over and over. And I'm like, yeah, I can handle whatever turn my birthing may take. Yeah, no problem. But that's all I heard from that point on. The rainbow was out of my scope. The affirmations were out of my scope. It was like a constant replay. And finally, Roberta said, if you don't stand up and have this baby, I'm going to transfer you to the hospital. Which I know now she couldn't have transferred me with a crowning baby. But at the time, I'm like, oh, no hospital. And I stood up and it was full pressure. Because, I mean, you're coming out of that no pressure water. And you stand up and there's a head bowling ball emerging. And she got me out of the tub to a stool. My husband was behind me. And as soon as I wrapped my legs around that stool, I had 2 pushes and she was out. And Ruth caught her, one of the student midwives who is a good friend now. She lives in Arizona. And they put that baby up on my chest and she was blue. And I heard a thud. And they put oxygen on her and she, like that. And you're still so stunned, you know, when a baby first comes out. And you're looking down and the pictures were of a little oxygen mask on her and then off and then on. And I was just so overwhelmed. And they got me into the bed. And Roberta said, well, let's get her into the bed and we'll deliver placenta. And Ruth said, oh, the placenta's already out. And I heard Roberta say, that's not good. I had a baby in my arms. I didn't care. She was crying. She was moving. We got to the bed, and all I wanted was skin to skin. That was like my goal. I didn't even know what skin to skin was or what it meant at the time, but that's all I wanted. Now I realize that I didn't have that when I was a baby, and I was healing my own stuff, but didn't know it at the time. But I had 4 hours of skin to skin with her. It was delicious. My best friend was there. My doula was there. Angie was there. Paul was there, and everyone just kind of melted away. All I know is I had this little fat, chubby-lipped baby that wasn't breathing well, but to me it didn't matter. She was still alive, and she was on my chest. They'd give her oxygen, then they go away. Roberta had already called Children's to have us transferred there, but she wasn't latching, and she said, you know, she should have latched by now. We need to get you over there. Just to check. Well, Finnley coded at least once on the way over, but we weren't allowed to be in the ambulance, so we didn't know that. And by the time we got to Children's, she was hooked up to every kind of electrode, 4 PICC lines in her body, everything.
Could you explain to everyone what coded is?
Died. They brought her back to life. And once we got to the hospital, I mean, I fainted in the lobby because I'd just given birth and I was kind of, and I think it was just loss of blood and exhaustion. And so they were all worried about me. And I'm like, get me to my baby. I want to be with my baby. And they had us separate about 2.5, 3 hours. Finally pulled us in there. And they kept calling her him because Finnley is a boy's name, and it bugged me. And I said, she is a girl. I need some pink, and I need it now. And one of the nurses made a little bow for her head. There was a feather boa thing that came within an hour, and all of a sudden
from the hospital.
From the hospital,
they provide feather boas.
Well, it was some kind of. It was not feather because that probably has allergens, but it had some kind of fuzziness to it.
It's a pink fuzz.
Pink fuzz. Yeah. They changed all of her paperwork to pink, and that was for me the most important. That they know she was a girl. And that they started treating her with respect. And one of the things that I learned in the hypnobirthing Bible, as I call it, is that care providers are human beings, and sometimes they just need to be talked to like human beings instead of in charge. And speaking kindly and making a team out of the people that are trying to help you reminds them that this is a human situation instead of a medical situation. And it was really the verbiage that I used, and same with my husband. It changed the whole situation for us. And long story short, we were on life support for 3 days. And after 3 days, they came and showed us 2 CAT scans, one of a normal brain, and one of her brain. And her brain was completely grayed out. And he said, you know, she's brain dead. And I don't know how to tell you this, but it looks like she's been dead for a week, even though we know she wasn't. There's nothing we can do. Like, we need to take her off life support. And I'm seeing the evidence, and my husband's like, okay, let's pull the plug. You know, he's a man. We're going to go with fix this.
Do the thing.
Do the thing. And I didn't accept it. I kept going, why would God or source or whatever let me touch this baby and then take her? Like, that didn't make sense to me. And especially after losing 6, I was like, I'm not okay with that.
Yeah.
And it, my sister...
Rewrite the plan,
Right.
please.
That plan sucks, and I'm not a part of that one.
Yeah.
And my sister convinced me to come home. We were doing 12-hour shifts. Come home and just sleep and let it sink in. That was the best sleep I ever had in my life because I knew she was taking care of things. She rubbed my feet till I fell asleep, and I slept solid for about 10 hours. And when I woke up, I was like, we need to plan a funeral.
Okay, this is Care at present day. My episode with Birth Queens ran really long, so at this point they had to edit a section out. We did plan a funeral for Finnley while she was in the hospital, but it never took place. Because I was not accepting the diagnosis, she remained on life support for 3 more days, making our NICU stay an 8-day total, while we called on everybody to pray for her and keep her in their thoughts. And then we took her home with hospice. She was expected to live for about 24 hours, but she kept living. So after 6 weeks, we took her off hospice and went back to the original neurologist who showed us those CAT scans. And he said it was nothing short of a miracle that we were sitting in front of him right then. So present day, Finnley's 15. She has cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and is a quadriplegic. She doesn't walk or talk, and she is very much our miracle. So now we can rejoin the episode.
She loves praise music. She loves pom-poms and any kind of music, actually. Sweetest giggle in the whole wide world. And her birth taught me that there's a power in becoming a mother. And I knew it from having Angie already, but the transition of what I learned through her birth and how to connect and how to make it count, not for us and our fairy tale Instagram bullshit birth, but for the actual human being that we've lost that sense of connection, that needed to be taught. And I didn't know how it was going to happen. I just knew, I'm like, I got to teach this. I've got to figure this out. And I've got to become a doula. And I got to have 10 births. And so at 9 months after we had her semi-stable, I did Jerry Ryan's doula training one weekend, and the next weekend flew to Florida and did the hypnobirthing training. And then the next Monday started a class.
This sums you up so well. I just need to interject here. 9 months old, her baby, who for the first 2 months, they didn't know was going to be alive.
Right.
And 9 months in, you're like, I got to
start this party.
Yes. Let's start the revolution.
The kind of gal that gets a bee in her bonnet and just
She gets
goes.
shit done.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I said. Yeah.
A lot of masculine energy.
a lot of yang, if you will.
Yes.
Do you feel like there's something that you can attribute to Finnley? Like you said that her name meant fair-haired hero. Do you feel like she saved you from something?
Absolutely. You know what she saved me from? She saved me from a life of not believing myself. She saved me from the lack of power I think that women are handed when they come into the world. Especially since we don't have village and tribe and strong women around us that we see nursing babies and going through the toils of childbirth, which it's only toil in your head. There's, occasional pain and misery when you have a malpositioned baby and stuff like that. But the midwives and the witches in the village knew how to fix that. And we had skills behind it, and we had power behind it. And we had natural medicine, and we had all this stuff that I had grown up in complete opposite of. It was patriarchal. Everything was fixed by medicine. I liked hospitals. I liked drugs. I'm okay with antibiotics. I'm okay with shots every 5 minutes. I don't care. I didn't know any better. I didn't know about homeopathy. I didn't know about herbs. I didn't know that we have so much power in our bodies and in our minds. I think that the hypnobirthing unlocked our minds are so powerful. And if women believe in something, everything can happen. And we just aren't taught that. And we're taught instant gratification. And nowadays, there's nothing hard in our lives. If it's hard, we walk away from it. Well, that's definitely not the path for me. Yeah. I sweat. I'm not doing that. Or, I won't look good in my Snapchat feed if I do that.
Right.
And we just have forgotten that there's physical stuff that we do that actually connects us to the planet and to each other, which has led me to not only teaching that, but that's what got me into the cuddling and the sex coaching, because we don't touch anymore. We stop touching little boys at 5 because they need to man up, and we treat them differently than we do girls. And then the next time they get touched is when their hormones kick in, and then it's sexual touch. And so they don't remember that there is nurturing touch that's platonic because we don't do that. And then we're mad at men because they're aggressive. I'm like, we're not teaching them that they can touch and we can touch them and it's okay. But that's another story. But it'll
be the next podcast.
It's really come full circle for me in seeing that it's all about connection.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that Finnley's birth taught me was that when parents come into class, their number one fear is, what if my kid dies? What if my kid has 4 heart chambers? What if my kid has autism? What if? Well, you can't control any of that.
Not a thing.
And you can worry about it and ruin your whole birth about it. Or you know that when that baby comes, it's your baby, and that's the baby that was meant for you. And Finnley was the baby meant for me. She wasn't supposed to go anywhere else. She was supposed to stay here and be hard and difficult and delicious. And those hard days that I have, you guys have hard days too. Your baby just picked up their diaper and smeared poop all over and took a marker to your wedding dress and then kicked the dog. And mine doesn't do that. But I have just as hard of days. They're just different kinds of hard. So it doesn't matter if it's handicapped or disabled or if it's real life. Some days are just going to suck and other days are magic. And the only thing we can control is how educated we are to know what options we have for whatever shows up, because it could be a fairy tale birth or it could be everything you didn't want, but that's the lesson you needed in that birth. But the bottom line is it's always the baby's birth. Every time. And when you start looking at birth through, how can I make her birth special? How can I make his birth special? Because we are mammals, and when we come into the world, that's our imprint. Is the room quiet and chaotic? Quiet and not chaotic? Is it chaotic and everybody screaming? Or is it love and connection and safety and relief and those feelings? Because that's what makes the baby go, oh, okay, I can trust this, even though it's cold and it's foreign and there's a lot of light and it's a total, I mean, they're coming from water to land. It's a nice, soft, warm place to cold and chaotic. And the softer you make that for them, the better they're going to transition. And then if it is chaotic and everybody's screaming and all of that, how do we help heal them when they're babies so that that isn't their first impression, but their impression is when it's bad, there's other things that can make it better and someone's going to witness that happened to me.
Yeah, because that's just a microcosm of life. Like, life isn't going to be easy for anyone. So
yeah,
right.
But that there's safety and strength, and you're resilient, and you can do this, and you have people around you,
and let them connect with other people. You know, the one thing that shocked me the most, I think, through Finnley's birth was when I'm sitting in the NICU, and I'm the only mom in the NICU, and I'm looking at all these sick babies, and I'm like, where are their parents? And the nurses are amazing. They say, go home, get rest, do your thing. We've got it, blah, blah, blah. And I understand that. But what the parents didn't understand, and this was 10 years ago, is that your baby was with you for 10 months in your womb. And now they're wondering where you are. Why isn't grandma there if you can't be there? Why isn't partner there if you're not there? Someone needs to be touching them and being their advocate and talking to them. They get home faster. You know, strangers are cuddling babies. Great. Why aren't you cuddling your baby? And it's not to put guilt on anybody. It's just, I teach my parents that don't leave your baby. Don't leave your baby. And I was left in an incubator for 2.5 weeks with jaundice back in the day on an army base. And my mom could only visit me for 2 hours and only feed me through the hole with a bottle. So I was craving that skin to skin my whole life, but I didn't know where it came from and why. And everything comes full circle if you allow the lessons, right?
Yeah, look for the connections.
So, anyway,
yeah,
she did save me.
That's really interesting, and it's also, I was thinking when you were talking about how when you were first pregnant with her, it sounded like everything that you were saying was like you kind of felt trapped in your body, like you were a victim of your body. It sounded like, you know, the pregnancy was scary because you'd had so many that had ended badly before. And so there was this feeling of like, oh gosh, like I'm stuck with this experience. And then thinking about the birth, like I can't hand this off. I have to do it myself. And then it sounded like the hypnobirthing kind of gave you a feeling of ownership and, you know, some control and just like ways to cope with what was going to happen mentally that really, really worked for you.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I didn't have coping skills before. I went to panic mode.
Yeah.
It was always panic. And nervousness, anxiousness, and my environment and my family reflected that back, because that was our family dynamic, right?
Yeah.
And Paul had no skills, not that just because he was Paul, but he was a guy. And I mean, it kind of helped.
If any of you are wondering, Paul's no longer on the
Right.
scene.
We're divorced now. But
Paul took a
for the
leave
better,
of
I'm
absence.
sure.
leave of absence.
Yeah.
It was just I grew up in chaos. It's
Yeah.
just there was love there, but it was chaos. And so I didn't know that there was a softer side. And I learned that through hypnobirthing, like take some time, meditate, think about things. It's not all about self-hypnosis and you're going to be in a trance. It's nothing like that. It's your mind is very powerful. And if you allow your body to just do what it's supposed to do, your mind can cope with it instead of all this monkey mind we have going of this could happen, and this could happen, and this could happen. And I was focusing on worst case because that's all I'd ever experienced. So my lived lesson was nothing goes right, everything is horrible, and you're never going to come out on top until my birth. Which would other people might be like, that was the most traumatic birth ever, and then you had the NICU, and then your baby, and you've got this handicapped child. But that's what taught me, no, things can turn around. And you can choose to look at it in a chaotic, horrible way, or you can look at it as, whew, what do we have to learn here?
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm supposed to be her mom. Obviously, Angie was to learn patience and love and acceptance. And man, if you hear anyone when Angie was in high school, if they said retard or something like that, oh my gosh, we're gonna have a fight in church. She would launch into them like, you have no idea what people are going through in their life. And I mean, I don't think she would have had that advocacy and that awareness. And she does postpartum work now, and she's amazing with babies, especially twins. Like, she knows how to address them in a very soft way because she's been addressing Finn and her stuff for so many years and communicating on a level that's not normal.
Yeah. So
It's
how old
intuition.
Andy's 21 now?
She's 21.
And Finn's going to be 10.
10 in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Gosh, that's wild.
Yeah. So it's the hardest, most powerful, and delicious experience of my life. And it gave me such insight as to how to teach in a way that people could get connected, because connection is the key for birth. Like, it doesn't matter if you are a same-bodied couple. It doesn't matter if you're a single mom. It doesn't matter if you have a perfect marriage or no marriage. What is about the baby? It's all about the baby. How do we connect with this baby?
And people, I see a lot of times when people come in for interviews, San Diego has a lot of people that are really into like manifesting your reality. And although I believe in that, people come in and they talk about that as if the baby's out of the equation. This isn't going to happen because I've been manifesting it. I don't want to talk about whether or not things could go wrong because I just want to keep this positive birth and like this perfect controlled outcome in my mind. And I'm like, the baby is a sentient being and it's its own person and it has just as much effect, if not more, on the birth than you do. And you can't
call the
control
shots
it.
for that.
Yeah, like you can't manifest your baby's birth. It's their birth.
It's their birth. You already had yours.
Yeah.
And that's one of my first key things in class 1 is I hope your moms didn't F it up. I hope your birth was amazing. And one of my dads currently is like, I was born on the side of the road in Vietnam. She was walking to the hospital. I'm like,
that's
no
amazing.
wonder you're so casual. This is amazing. And I said to his wife, you're so blessed. Look at your partner. Like, he's like, whatever happens, it happens. And I'm like, because it's really the truth. Like, it's not your birth. Do you think she planned that? No.
No, just happened.
Ideally, I'd like to have birth on the side of
On the side of the road on my way to the hospital.
Totally.
Sounds great.
I think what I've heard you tell this story many times over the years of knowing you, and
I don't have any other stories.
it never gets old.
the
It's
story.
yours. We all only have our own, right? Which is great. It's not about how your birth goes or the objective events that occur. It's about how we meet that and process that, and not that like shit can hit the fan and you have to feel happy and positive all the time. That's not the point. Just feel, like, be in your feelings, be connected with your body and your baby and your partner, and
become vulnerable with it.
be vulnerable.
Like, what are you scared about? Let's talk about that. Let's
Yeah.
find a backup plan. Well, there's no backup plan if my baby dies. I'm like, there's not. The backup plan is, do you have supportive people in your life?
Yes.
Who can get you through that? No, I don't have anyone out here. I said, you have me. You have San Diego's birth community. There's always somebody. I said, people came out of the woodwork that I didn't even know about. I said, there was a woman in my church that went to every baby boutique in San Diego and bought every baby white dress she could find. So I had some to bury Finnley in. Like this, the random niceness of strangers and people show up, especially when there's a baby involved. So don't worry about that. Why don't you focus on the health of this baby and the love and the feeling in the room? Because it doesn't matter if they're 4 walls in a hospital. It doesn't matter if it's a home birth. It doesn't matter if it's in the backseat of a car. It's the 4 walls around you do not matter when it's the love that matters. How are we connected to this baby? That's what matters. Talk to her. Talk to him. Let's make it beautiful for them. Birth is an experience. It's not an Instagram post.
Yeah.
Like, we're so used to instant gratification now that we don't know that hard things are good for us. And because everyone's protected us.
Yeah. And they're inevitable, too. Everyone's going to experience something hard, and it's just up to you what you take away from it. And in the moment, it definitely doesn't have to be like, peaches and cream, I love this, this is great.
Peaches and cream are boring.
Right.
Like,
They're so cliche.
yeah, delicious sometimes, but boring.
I mean, I've never eaten it, but
You're such an animal. You're so healthy. Makes me furious.
that is not what I'm
love
saying.
you
I'm
so
saying
much.
who eats peaches and cream? What
People in Georgia do.
Definitely
Okay.
have, yeah.
you have?
Yeah, me too.
I have.
I didn't even think that was a
Delicious.
thing. Like, I always thought it was just a saying growing up. I'm like, peaches and cream. Who eats
Okay.
peaches and cream?
A juicy peach with
Delicious.
organic whole milk on it?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds great, but I just didn't think.
Well,
that
now
was
we
a
know
thing.
what's happening in the spring with her.
Right?
We have a date planned now.
Yeah.
Yeah, take me out
Awesome.
on the town somewhere in San Diego that serves peaches and cream.
Yeah.
We'll find. That's a
We'll
challenge.
find it.
I'm
We'll
rolling
find
my
it.
eyes.
Right, they'll have barbecue there too.
I'm just gonna
for
say
sure.
barbecue.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
This will be my best
I'm
day.
totally down.
Oh man, I love you so much. Thank you for sharing all this. What would you say for people that have already had their babies and it didn't go? They didn't have these tools or skills beforehand that maybe they feel like they needed, or it didn't go well.
I think before the next baby even is thought about, process the stuff. There are birth story medicine people in town, and you can even do that online if you're in a part of the country that you can't access it. But find out what, and I don't want to say that you attracted, but I want to say what pattern is playing out that you needed to learn, because birth is one of the greatest teachers. And what I find is the one thing that you are saying, I don't want, you will pull in every single time, every single time. But there's a lesson in that. What is the lesson? That it's resistance, it's giving up, it's letting go, it's trusting. It's what is it that is putting you into that vulnerable spot that you throw a wall up?
Yeah.
If you can process that, so this is what I have parents that come and they've processed it and they're like, okay, I'm ready for this baby who's already 6 months along.
Right.
Wait, what if I give this baby a good birth and I gave that bad birth to the last baby? And then there's this whole guilt thing, and they always have this with a second time mom. How do I love the second baby as much as I love the first baby? And I have to kind of go back to remember what we were taught, remember what we've learned, that babies know what they're coming into. They're here to be your teacher. They knew what was coming up for their birth. That's why some babies come fast and furious. They have a short cord. They know if they don't come fast and furious, they're not going to make it.
Yeah.
Like, trust your baby's birth. If they were breech, your biggest worry was a C-section.
Yeah.
It was your nightmare, but you got through it. Look how much stronger you are. That's the kind of strength this baby needed for you to raise them. There are always ways to look at it, not in a Pollyanna perfect peaches and cream sort of way.
If you will.
If you will.
Thank you.
But there are always ways to look at it to where you go, oh, this happened when I was a kid. This happened when I was a teenager. There's a pattern. And the baby brings that back up. You're able to switch it. And then your next stuff isn't as bad because you're like, oh, I recognize that now. I'm not going to throw my wall up. I'm going to be vulnerable through it.
Yeah.
Because fear and worry needs to be pushed into and let sit, because it's mostly in our head. It's not a physical thing. It's mostly in our head. And when we can sit with it and then go, ooh, where am I feeling that in my body? Take a breath. Now, how am I going to handle it? We break the pattern. And I think the hypnotherapy helps with that a lot. There's EMDR that can help with trauma. That is an amazing therapy without drugs that works really well. But before you even bring another baby in, another soul coming into your family, work through this other stuff. And if you're catching this when you haven't done that, work through this stuff. Because you don't want to repeat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's people that can, and there's going to be tears shed, and you're going to have to be vulnerable, and you're going to have to read Brene Brown stuff, and you're going to have to watch her YouTube videos, and you know. But there's another side to it, and you're going to read Wayne Dyer's book, No More Excuses, and there are things that are there meant to help you, and they can help you, and then it's going to switch up all your relationships and all your boundaries, and you have to be ready for that. Oh, but it's so sexy.
Pull the rug out. It's worth it.
It's really living. It's not, to me, that is the key to getting out of a formulaic life where you just assume that, like, you know, when I grow up, I'm going to have a job, and then I'm going to get married, and then I'm going to buy a house, and then I'm going to have 2.5 kids. And it's a way of getting out of that and actually exploring what exciting realities there might actually be for you, you know, if you're that kind of person.
Yep. I mean, I kind of came from, I was going to have a Stepford life. Like that was expected, and I was okay with that. I'm like, yeah, and I'll stay home, and he'll go to work every day, and I'll keep the house, and I'll have a rose garden. And I did that for 3 years, and it was magic. Everything was falling apart behind the scenes, and I didn't know that. But I also realized that Source, God, however you want to put that, had things already lined up in place for my baby to be taken care of, my daughter to be taken care of, the three of us to do it on our own, and to be with the most amazing parents on the planet and be a part of their journey and see their spiritual growth and their hedonistic growth. And there's a plan for all of that. We come together at the right time, right place, the right people will show up. Even if I even tell my parents that you've created this perfect birth and you think, okay, everything, I've done my homework and everything. And then this crappy provider that you did not like is the one that shows up to your birth. What if that happens? I'm like, what if that happens? Is that the time you find your voice?
Yeah.
Is that the time you say, you're excused because I'm the consumer and I fire you? And you take back your power or find it for the first time? I said, don't look at anything as that's the end of this. Look at it as, how can I turn that no into a, not working for me right now?
Yeah.
Right? And I don't take no's anyways. And someone says no to me, I'm like, I can get around that. I'll figure that out.
I'm really
You're
shocked.
nothing
by
if
that.
not persistent.
I can't have that burrito in labor. I want 2 of them now and an ice cream bar.
That's how I feel when people like tell me not to take pictures at birth at the hospital. I'm like, okay.
Right. I'm just using my selfie stick for myself,
Yeah.
and it's on record, and I'm videoing it now.
Yeah.
Texting someone right now.
Right. I'm so sorry that it looks like the camera's pointed at her vagina.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah. We've done births before like that, haven't we, Allie?
Sneaky sneak
Yeah.
pics. Yeah.
Whatever, they're the best pictures we've ever taken, too. I think angels intervene in those pictures. We're like, oh, these will be really
Exactly.
good. Make sure you get that doctor's hand all up in there. No.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, anything else that we haven't touched on or questions?
I don't know. I think what you guys are doing is amazing. I think the more we talk about birth, the ins and outs of it, it gets less scary for people because I was terrified of birth, absolutely terrified. I had one sister that had 5 C-sections and one that had 4 natural births. And the C-section sister would tell you all about it, and the natural birth, she kept a tight seal on that. And I was like, whoa, what does that mean? Dun, dun, dun. But she wouldn't talk to me about it.
Interesting.
Right?
Has that changed?
She didn't really talk about it. No,
She's still won't talk
and she's
about it.
kind of modest too, so maybe that's it. But I think she didn't want to freak anybody out, so it was just silent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But women need to talk about their births, good, bad, and the ugly. And if it was, sometimes if it's a bad birth and we have to regurgitate it to every single person for a million years, and you're like, seriously, that needs to be addressed with a professional so that you can get help and get past it, right? Because if that's your sticking point, you're only going to project that onto your next baby. But
or everything else in your life,
Absolutely.
Even if you're not going to have other babies.
Every mommy group you go to, everyone's going to hear this poor wounded woman.
Yeah.
And we don't need to stay in that wounded place anymore. There are enough healers in our communities that we can get out of that and find some hope again. Because, after 6 miscarriages, I was done. I get that lack of hope and anger and pissed off. And
Yeah.
I'd go to church and everyone would have babies and they weren't even holding them. They'd put them in their carriers. And I would like, hold your baby. Like, you don't even know what a blessing that is and a privilege to be a mother with a baby puking on you and pooping all over the place. Like, I would die for that.
Yeah.
And you'd just throw them in their carrier and walk off and be like, oh, finally they're asleep. And those words would pierce me because I'm like, I would give anything for that. I'll hold your baby. I'll clean up the poop. I'm happy to do that. But we have to share our good birth stories. We have to talk about them and say, here's what I did and here are the tools I used, because they're going to pick up a tool from a midwife, then they're going to get online and they're going to pick up a tool from a blog, and then they're going to read Anna May's book, and they're going to pick up a tool, and then they're going to, hear someone's grandmother's story that said this, and those things are not passed on enough. And the only way it's going to change for our daughters is if we start talking about it and owning it.
Yeah.
Own the good, the bad, and the ugly, and be okay with it.
Yeah.
Because even a home birth transfer that they think is the worst thing possible, if they're prepped for it, they go, I am only being transferred because it's the safety of me and my baby. It's not me failing.
Yeah.
It's the safety of me and my baby. And then they can go to those four walls and have a gorgeous birth where they get the right medical care. And sometimes it's not the medical care they needed. It was the transfer, because that was the worst case scenario for them. And then they see how they can get through that. Like, we just don't know the blessings sometimes if it comes like as a curse that birth brings. And that's pregnancy, that's every loss, that's infertility. All of that is meant so that we have experience to help other people.
Yeah, it's a very magnified experience of life, just in general.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I mean, the people who experience trauma, I think in my practice it's really gone down since I started talking to people about like what a C-section might look like, what's an appropriate time to have a C-section. And that's made a big difference for a lot of my moms, because before they'd be devastated if they had a C-section and they'd feel guilty. And, I still have to debrief a lot of people and talk to them about it. And like, no, I think it was a really good choice to get the epidural when you did. I mean, you needed to sleep. You'd been in labor for 50 hours or whatever it is. And I just find that prepping people with that idea that, you can't control birth, that it is up to the baby a lot, and that, we just listen to your baby and listen to your own vital signs in labor and during birth and see what they say. We just kind of follow that roadmap that they're laying out in front of us. It's kind of like the way is being paved as you go down the road. And that seems to help a lot of people just see their birth in a different way. Like my baby needed to come out through my belly. That's all right. And this next baby might come out through my vagina. And that's all right, too. And
I had one mom who was obsessed with mammal births. And she loved whale births. And she loved all this stuff. And she had a C-section. And she said, he just came out the porthole. No, the blowhole. That's what she said. He came out the blowhole. Because we always talked about the side door or the front door. Where the baby can come out.
That's
the
what I call
sunroof,
it, yeah.
And she said, just came out the blowhole. And it was the way she phrased it and the way she talked about her birth was a birth, not a surgery.
Yeah.
And that's why I call it a belly birth. I don't call it a C-section. I call it a belly birth. And it's still your baby's birth.
Yes.
And if a baby comes out that way, their neck's been tweaked a little bit. They're going to need a little more care from a chiropractor or some adjusting and understanding it's still a birth. I mean, they can come out the vagina and still need all that. I still encourage a chiropractor adjustment. But it has to be talked about because their fears are the unknowns, and then you don't talk about it. And then it magnifies at the one point where they could actually make some critical, beautiful decisions and make them out of love instead of fear.
Yeah.
They should know if there's a transfer. Here's why and how we make it beautiful and how we cope with it. And, I have families that when they say, what if I have an induction? I'm like, here's what you do. You get super pissed that you went through 5 weeks of natural birth classes with me. You're angry that you hired a doula and wasted all this money. And And I said, I want you to mourn it. I want you to cry it. I want you to be pissy. And after you're done with that little episode, and it could take you a couple days, or it could take you 3 hours, then I want you to have a beautiful last supper.
Yeah.
And I want you to cuddle up. I want you to have some sex. I want you to have some delicious time. And it might just be with yourself if you're single. And then you're going to call your doula and say, let's make a plan for this baby.
Yeah.
And then you're going to start working with the medication because that's going to work with your body. And you're going to focus on the birth and let all that go. Yeah. Because that is the lesson for this, is let it go. And some moms, after they do that, go into labor and they don't even have the induction.
Right.
Because they were holding on so tight.
Yeah.
And the baby's like, not safe yet. I'm not coming out.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we go and we have a beautiful induction.
Yeah.
And we have a vaginal birth. With or without medication, it doesn't matter because they're focused on the outcome being beautiful. And our bodies work better with medication if our mind is in the game instead of being pissy.
Oh, definitely. Get a little bit of that placebo effect in there.
Right?
God, for real.
Maybe a little bit of your own oxytocin coming on board.
Little sexy
if you're not
juice.
resisting it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I've seen some magic with inductions where we're eliciting all the oxytocin and the cuddling and the touch and Yeah. But then I cuddle everyone now.
I know. Well, so the long
profesh.
last birth that I just had, it was very long. Eventually, after a couple days of labor, she ended up with an epidural, and so everybody needed sleep, and he, laid down on the couch to sleep, her partner, and my choices were like sit up in a chair and like try to you guys can't see me, I'm making my like struggle to stay awake face, right? Or spoon behind her and like scratch her back, and we just spooned all night, and then whenever she needed to rotate to the other side, I'd like get up and flip her with the peanut ball and then like move myself to the other side. Yeah, like scratch her.
Way more comfortable for everybody.
We felt great later, you know. So
there's something about connection, and we have lost the sense of touching one another platonically, humanely, and everything is all through those damn phones.
Yeah.
And it's all about looking picture perfect. And I learned that lesson in December, big time. My daughter, we took all these pictures of these beautiful beaches in Cancun. They were amazing. And then Andrew would say, look at this. And she'd flip the camera around, and she'd taken all the people out, all the shadows, and there was this beautiful beach with no people. And I went, oh my gosh. And she goes, this is perfect. I'm going to put this on Instagram. And I went, you just took out the humanity of the picture that I thought was beautiful with the people and the...
Yeah.
And she's like, wow, I want a pretty beach.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the world we're living in.
Yeah.
Everything has to be Kardashianed.
Yeah.
And if it looks like that, we can actually put out that our life is going okay.
Oh, right. You guys, literally this morning, I'm just pulling my covers here as usual. I was taking
the host
a selfie of myself on Snapchat to send to one of my friends, and it took me so long to take it. I took multiple pictures and I was like, ew, like no. Right. And then after a little bit of that, when I put maybe like a minute, I literally said out loud, I hate myself, and like put the phone down because I was like, what are you doing?
Like, why is it so important that we look picture perfect? And I'm still guilty of that. I'm doing filming, and I hate being on the camera. I'm good at talking to 10 million people face to face, but you put me on camera and I feel like there's a barrier. I want to spit on you. I want us to touch, and I want
a fluid bond with you. Do you understand me?
I want to walk around and smell you, and we're missing it. And I guess I want to go back to caveman times. I don't know, but I think that's why people like my class, because we are on the floor and we are touching and we're moving, and we ask for consent for touch, and we teach boundaries, and they're not used to that either.
Totally.
And it's just reconnecting to humanness that we just don't have. And I wasn't brought up in it.
Totally.
But now that I found it, I just want to share it with everyone and spit on them.
One of my favorite things about being in the birth community here, and I don't know if this is the way it is everywhere, but we are so lucky here that like some of my closest friends in the world now are birth workers that I've met in our community. And when I have a hard day or a long birth or I'm tired, there are people who will come over and bring me food and scratch my back in my bed. Like, all the time that happens. And I do that for them, and it's the best.
Yep. Like, I need some cuddle time. I need some sister time. I need,
come spoon me while I, like, hug this heating pad and cry myself to sleep. They're like, okay.
I need to take a lot of pampering.
Yeah, what kind of ice cream do you want?
Yeah. And I feel fortunate enough that there are pockets like that all around the States, and we can build more of those if we connect and drop the competition card and realize that we're all in this together.
Yep.
And there are enough babies for everyone. And there's enough money for everyone, and there's enough everything for everyone.
Yeah.
And get out of the mentality that it's me and me, me, me. And how can I help you? It shifts everything, every single thing in our life.
Yeah, shift away from like operating from a place of lack from operating from a place of abundance.
Right.
It's huge.
Yep. Super sexy. Everything should be super sexy.
I love you so much.
sexy and or delicious.
Yes.
Preferably both, right?
Both. Because that means the right hormones are involved.
Yeah.
Right? The connection hormones, the oxytocin is there.
The kind of hormones that you want to live with nonstop.
Yep.
Yep.
And I definitely feel a drop when I'm not in it with everybody. You know? And there's always someone that needs some time. You know?
Yeah.
Because we're not always in partnership. We're not always at the top of our game. We're not we're lonely. Mm-hmm. We're on our phones. Dude, those phones, they suck the life out of us.
I know, I love hate it.
And I know, I have the same problem. I do love hate
I mean,
it.
it's really great when I don't have to go to the bank to deposit every single check, but then there are
Totally,
times
yes.
where, it's
Or when
less
we
than
can
ideal.
like put this podcast out and people can listen to our bullshit on their phones. We
Right.
like that part.
at their own convenience.
Totally. But this is just, I think the theme of this whole podcast is, or this whole show is connection with your baby, connection with yourself, your body, your story, your shit, your bravery, your resilience. Dig in.
We all have it.
It's worth it. Yes.
We all have
totally.
it. We just sometimes need someone else to show us that we can do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wish I could share all the stories I've heard this last week of some delicious births that were like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe they can be some of your
times.
podcasts.
Oh, yes.
Oh, send them our
Yeah,
way.
I've got plenty of moms that would love to talk about it because it's sexy.
Yeah.
Great.
Delicious.
Well, guys, we did it.
Thanks for having me, and we did it under an hour.
I know.
Whoa!
Nailed it. Your story,
up?
so concise.
Yeah.
Well done.
Remember,
Yeah.
because you said I tell it all the time, so.
I know you are good at it. I like that.
Do you got
about
the
you.
15-minute
elevator
version,
version
or would
of
you like
it.
the
You got the
6-hour version?
Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.